Hello and welcome. Today I want to highlight one of the best licensed games that I ever had the opportunity to play, as well as one of the best SpongeBob games that I have played. And that game is, of course, Spongebob Squarepants Battle for Bikini Bottom. So let's start with why this is one of the best licensed games that I ever had the opportunity to play. First, it's just a solid game underneath the surface. It has a really good level design with mechanics and gameplay that surprisingly fits SpongeBob and his character well. And when it doesn't, they usually transition those moves and actions to other characters like Patrick and Sandy. With a variety of levels and designs and tweaks that you can have throughout the game, I just feel it works well, at least within the SpongeBob world, and it doesn't hurt the fact that it's a solid game underneath. One of the biggest benefits of Battle for Bikini Bottom, I think, would probably be its level design. Its levels are big, wide, and gorgeous to look at. And one of the best bits I like about the levels is that each one, from a design perspective, has its own theme to it. Jellyfish Fields is about getting used to SpongeBob and his variety of movesets, as well as Patrick. But when you move to downtown Bikini Bottom, it turns into the SpongeBob and Sandy show. But for SpongeBob, its theme is the SpongeBall. And for Sandy, it's getting to grips with her controls. But then when you move to Goo Lagoon, it's advanced platforming, going around the levels and jumping on very narrow or hazardous areas, as well as trying to keep yourself above the surface. And this continues on and on and on throughout the entire game. And it just all culminates into a game which has a very distinct focus throughout the entire experience. And it's not introducing too much at once, which leads to an overall pleasant experience. What helps with that pleasant experience is also the enemy variety. The enemies in Battle for Bikini Bottom, I think, are probably one of the most unique aspects of the game, because these are some of the most basic and simple enemy designs that you'll experience in most games. But the challenge isn't actually fighting them, but rather navigating around them so that you yourself don't get hurt. SpongeBob has some health, but it's very difficult to recover, and the enemies hit like a tank. But you also are stronger than them, and they'll die very easily. And it's sort of this beautiful ballet of dodging enemies and finding the way which enemies to kill first so that you can manage the rest, and positioning yourself so that you can use the defeated enemies to kill other enemies as they go down. It's absolutely fantastic and a very unique gameplay design, since most games that I've played, especially licensed games, don't really use the enemies themselves as a weapon unless it's for one level gimmick. And the last two things I think are great about this game is the very gradual difficulty curve. The game's not too difficult, and when it finally starts to get difficult and starts becoming a little more difficult to manage, they give you a new power-up and a new move to go aid you throughout the experience. As well, the game rewards exploring, especially with the backtracking. Some levels can't be completed without actually unlocking further abilities in the future, and other levels get a lot easier if you start exploring the overworld. And the overworld, in my opinion, is the best part about this game. It magically connects the entire game together in such a way that you feel that the world is somehow connected. You can see the path forward. An overworld map like this in Battle for Bikini Bottom, I think, is a necessity in most 3D platformers, since it gives you a good gauge for how far you've progressed and where you can go next. Especially since if you start looking around the corners, you can start seeing what might be ahead. It sort of get you excited to see what's to come. The other thing that this game does well is it's a good SpongeBob game. Now, that's not really hard to do, as Spongebob Squarepants isn't that complicated of a show. The premise is very simple. A problem is arisen, And throughout the show's shenanigans, SpongeBob either makes the problem worse or new problems arise because of the original problem. And by the end of the episode, the problem is resolved and they go home laughing, or perhaps they have a cop-out. But it's done in such a way that it's engaging and entertaining throughout the experience. At least from what I can remember of watching SpongeBob as a kid. Battle for Bikini Bottom manages to encapsulate that feeling in its level design. Usually the levels are in 3 acts, and each act usually aid or challenges that theme and maybe does a few other things throughout it. The only problem that I do have with the level stories is that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the levels just end with no real resolution throughout, and it's not the best. And that's pretty much it with Battle for Bikini Bottom. There's not much that I can actually say was bad about it, or better yet, there's really not much I can actually complain about the game. Sure, the writing is wonky in some areas, and I found a lot of glitches going through it, like missing audio and getting stuck on certain objects, but overall, there's not much that I'd actually change with this game. Although, that being said, if I could add one thing to this game to improve it a little bit, I would like to actually add sort of a challenge level at the end of every act. The boss fights are nice, but they're sort of just handed to you. I almost feel like a 4th level is necessary, just sort of as a, what did you learn today after playing these 3 teaching levels? It would make the game feel a little more connected, as well as give the game a little bit extra challenge on top of it. Imagine exploring Atlantis before fighting Robot Sandy in the Poseidon. That'd be the type of additions that I would add to Battle for Bikini Bottom. But at the same time, I don't know if that would actually help the game. Because, for the most part, the game is pretty much a perfect license game. It understands its purpose, it understands the license, and it makes a game that fits not only the world that it needs to encapsulate, but at the same time, it also works with the license to improve upon the gameplay as you go through it. This is absolutely a game that I can recommend anybody pick up, and honestly, after all these years, I still enjoy the original. I can't wait for Rehydrated to come out for Nintendo Switch and PlayStation and whatnot. I will be digging into that when it eventually comes out. But anyways, thank you ever so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and of course, thank you ever so much for watching, and take care.